So last time we were at SIB1, if I'm correct, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's try to do some talking about what to do next with respect to initial attach, because I believe that's the best way to understand the concepts. And from here on, I would like you all to keep noting things so that we can revisit these things later. What do I mean by that is that in the flow now we will uh, learn about a few things that are happening on a procedural level. Some things will happen, but we will not go into the details of those procedures. For example, you will see once we read the SIB2, we will go on with Ratch procedure. So that's another lecture in itself. But what I would like is not to disturb the flow of the call. Let's go to the call flow first, and then we can revisit these things later. So when you see words like these, you can just pin them for later. For example, as I said, Ratch procedure. Even inside Ratch procedure, there will be multiple things like uh, selecting the preamble and what kind of power should we use. So that brings in power control. And once we receive a response for Ratch inside Ratch procedure, we would hear something called uh, timing advance. So that's another procedure in itself. And then there is allocation. That's a different procedure in itself. And you will hear things about scheduling request, hark. So these things will happen during the flow, but they are actually a kind of a concept in itself. Uh, so um, I will approach the whole topic in this manner only. Let's stay on the flow for initial attach, and during that flow, basically, we shall be encountering some few concepts, but we won't go into deep detail into them, and we can revisit them later because those may require some researching, deep diving into it. Because see, the thing is, I don't remember things. I don't remember everything. So what happens usually is if I'm working on something or if I'm studying something, I return it for a while. I retain it for a while, and then I kind of start forgetting stuff. So top level things I remember, but deep diving may require some kind of preparation. Okay. Okay. So SIB2, why is it important? I told you that SIB1 majorly, as from my perspective, it offers two important things. One is cell related parameters, and the other one was the scheduling of. So the thing is that I have stressed this point before also multiple times, is that in time domain and frequency domain resource grid, uh, a few messages, they flow on certain channels that have a fixed uh, location. So it's easy to get them, to retrieve that information. Like we know where the SSS is going to be and where the PCF ICH is going to be. Based on PCF ICH, we know where the control region is going to be, and we also know where the PBCH is going to be in time frequency domain. And then comes the PDSCH. PDSCH consists of a lot of information, lots and lots of information, multiple types of information, different kinds of information, and for that allocation is done every TTI, and that is why it cannot be found in a fixed manner. It can be anywhere in frequency domain, it can be anywhere in time domain. So we need to provide some kind of idea to UE when and where to look for these things. So for up until MIB, we were at a fixed implementation in frequency time domain. For SIP1, we went semi-fixed, and the time domain was fixed, even frames, subframe number 5, but frequency was not fixed. In case of SIB2, even the time is not fixed. time will be calculated through this particular configuration in SIB1, periodicity and window length, etc. etc. So now, instead of looking at the right TTI, we will be looking at an interval, basically some kind of opportunity in time domain, where we will go for each subframe, and we will try to decode the DCI using SIRNTI to find SIB2 until we get it. Okay, so we took this example last time wherein we knew that 0 0 could be one opportunity, this frame, and the subframe 16 0 would be one opportunity, 32 0 would be one opportunity, etc. etc. So I believe there are no doubts regarding that. If there are, please ask. Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. So let's decode SIB2 now. So we have SIB2 already, and we have SIB2 because we have the location of SIB2 here, and once we encounter that location, we study the PCFICH to find the width of control region. We blindly decode control region using SIRNTI until we find a DCI, and once we find the DCI, we mm, we know where exactly the SIB2 is, and then we go on and decode the SIB2. Okay, so we have SIB2 now. Let's see what it has to offer to us, as we stress a lot on PDSCH data or PUSCH data errors and its correction. How we compensate PDCCH error? We do not compensate PDCCH error. See, here I'm assuming that compensation means the idea of either error correction or retransmission. Two things mean compensation. So the thing is, if PDCCH, first of all, PDCCH or PDSCH, they are provided with a lot of FEC, forward error correction. So there is a certain level of channel coding security added to it, which helps in error recognition and error correction as well. Single bit errors can be corrected also, uh, and if they cannot be corrected, then we have retransmissions, and then retransmissions also act in a way that we have another procedure called combining. That combining can even combine two bad packets to retrieve one good packet. That can happen. So PDSCH data and PUSCH data can be uh, error corrected also. Error detection is there, error correction is there, and then there is retransmission. But in case of PDCCH, we don't have the retransmission luxury. In case of PDCCH, if the PDCCH cannot be decoded correctly, if it cannot be corrected right away, then the data is lost. Plain and simple. There is nothing we can do about it, and that is the reason we spoke. Yes, Manjunath, PDCCH is associated with HARC mostly. No, sorry. I'm sorry, I'll take that back. PDCCH is not associated with HARC. So PDCCH is control information. So if PDCCH goes bad, then it's gone. You cannot have a retransmission of the DCI, and that is why we try to make sure that PDCCH is secure right at the start only. We wouldn't want it to be a less secure channel, and that is why there are certain conditions on PDCCH, such as PDCCH only uses modulation scheme of QPSK. It cannot use QAM because that is more error prone. So it's more secured, more security is added to it. Modulation schemes are used in such a way that they are less error prone, etc. etc. But there is no HARC associated with PDCCH. Not with PDCCH. HARC is only associated with PDSCH and PUSCH, user data basically. Okay, so where were we? SIB2. we wanted to go through SIB2. So SIB2, from my perspective, from a layer 2 perspective, we are more interested in SIB2 for a few items, such as Ratch related configuration mostly. So we will see through it. Okay, most of the information here I will let you figure out what it is supposed to be. I will just provide a very ultra brief idea about these two, because I mean, even I have a very ultra brief idea. Unless I'm working on something, then I go deep into that. So there is a UL carrier frequency usually. Okay, so downlink frequency we already know because we are in sync with it, but we don't know what the uplink frequency is going to be. So if it is TDD, this parameter is going to be absent because the same bandwidth is being used for uplink as well as downlink. So uh, that's irrelevant in case of TDD. For FDD, UL carrier frequency is will be present, and it will let you know where they can transmit an uplink. But if it is not present in case of FDD also, then 36.101, this one, it defines a TXRX frequency separation, and we can apply that to find out UL carrier frequency with the help of downlink carrier frequency that we already know. I believe this one is clear. Other than that, let's see what do we have here. Okay, so this one, we have radio resource common that provides a Ratch config that will be used for random access messaging. So I'll give you one thing here right away. So when UE needs to transmit in uplink, okay, for transmission in uplink, UE always need to let network know that I want to transmit. I need grant. So UE needs to let network know I need grant. Okay, and to do that there are few methods, there are few procedures, and they always are used in this order of preference. The most preferred one is BSR. In case we are not able to do BSR, then the UE moves to SR, and in case the UE is not able to do SR, it moves to Ratch. Okay, we'll see what we mean by if they cannot do. We'll see that later on, it will come back to us later on. So for now, you just put this order of preference in your mind. These two lines very important. For transmission in uplink, you will need to tell network that I need grant, and for that it will follow this level of preference, this order of preference. It will go for BSR. If it cannot do BSR, then it will go for SR. If it cannot do SR, it will go for Ratch. So that's Ratch, and here we have some kind of uh, configuration for Ratch. Okay, so what does it say? It says preamble info first of all. So when we let the network know, and by we I mean UE, when the UE needs to let network know that I have something to transmit using Ratch, if it has to do that using Ratch, then it needs a preamble. Okay, preamble is nothing but kind of a sequence. There are 64 sequences that are defined by the specifications, and SIB2 lets the UE know how many preambles are available. So like here it says 52 are available. Rest network can save, network can keep to itself for another procedure called handover. So it may keep some preambles to itself, that these are the preambles I'll be using for handover procedure. So these are available for Ratch. Contention free Ratch, contention based Ratch basically, not free. Then there is a power ramp up parameters. Okay, need to understand this very closely. So power ramp up steps is 2 dB. This means that if UE decides to initiate Ratch procedure and it does not get any response, If there is no response, in that case, UE will increase its power, but it cannot do it by itself. As I had mentioned before also multiple times, everything, almost everything, is decided by network is the decision maker, whole and soul. UE doesn't make any decision by itself. Either network makes every decision for UE, or it provides some configuration based on which UE can make some decisions. But in the end, it's network only that decides most of it. So power ramp up step is the step that UE will, if UE did first Ratch using power X, then the next would be X plus 2 dB, and if that is also not responded, then it would be another 2 dB step, so it would be X plus 4 and so on. That is how it's going to go. Okay, then we have preamble initial received target power. This, from this configuration, UE derives what should be its initial first power that it applies to, for doing for sending Ratch message. So this defines first, and this defines further step ups. Is that clear? Does everybody get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, good. Then we have some kind of supervision info. What does this say? As I said, first power, preamble initial, and then ramping up of the power. But how long can we keep at it? Right, that is also another question. It's not like we are going to be uh, sending ratches till eternity if we are not being responded. That's madness. So there's a preamble transmax also. Okay, these many preambles you are going to send in a row. Okay, and after that we have RA response window size. It says subframes 10. This means that once you send a ratch, okay, then wait for 10 subframes only. Within this, you should get a response for Ratch. If you are not getting any response within 10 subframes here, based on this configuration, this can be different also. So if you are not getting a response in this long of a window, then this Ratch is not being processed anymore. So in that case, you can go on for next preamble, or if preamble max has been reached, then something else. Okay, then there is something called MAC contention resolution timer. This is a timer. Here it says 48 subframes. So this timer will come in picture when we will study Ratch in detail. For now, just remember that during Ratch procedure there is something called message 3. I believe most of you already know all this. So message 3, once you sends, then the UE applies this timer, starts this timer, contention resolution timer, and before this timer expires, UE should get something called contention resolution message. If it does not get that message, we say the contention has failed for this UE, and uh, follow procedures will be uh, activated basically. If the contention is successful, then we move on to other things. If not, then it's a contention resolution failure, and for that this is the window, this is the timer. And then there is max hark message 3 transmissions. This number tells UE that if you do not receive a hark response for your message 3 transmission, then in that particular case you can retransmit message 3 for these many times. So here it is 4 times. The UE can basically uh, send message 3 at the max 3 times, 4 times in as per this uh, configuration. That clear? Okay. Then after that we have some channel related configurations. We have BCCH config. It says modification period coefficient. Honestly, I don't remember what it does. Let's check if it is mentioned here. Modification period coefficient. It says no. It only mentions how to parse it, but it doesn't say what it is for. Um, so basically, maybe you can try to find out what it does, what it is used for. If not, just drop me a message. I'll try to find it out. Then we have PCCH config. So this is paging channel. So this configuration is related to paging. So it says default paging cycle is 128 radio frames. So this helps in idle mode paging. Okay. So there is idle mode and DRX or connected mode DRX. So paging when done in idle mode, this would be the default paging cycle, 28 radio frames. This part, please check what it means. I don't really know. Then we have Ratch config. In this one, I will cover these two: Ratch config index and Ratch frequency offset. So, okay, just like we have downlink resource grid, we also have one uplink resource grid. And in case of uplink resource grid, uh, we need to let UE know. Okay, the network has to let UE know where exactly it can send Ratch. So if this is the uplink resource grid, okay, then this will also be uh, divided in the same manner. There will be resource blocks. So frequency domain divisions will be there, and time domain divisions will be there also. So something like this, and so on. Okay. So network has to let UE know where exactly in the frequency domain it can send Ratch, and where exactly in the time domain also it can send Ratch. Okay. So these two parameters that I told you, they provide um, where are these here? PRH config index and frequency offset, they provide that information only. Frequency offset tells UE that what's the offset in the uh, uplink resource grid in frequency domain. So this is the offset. Here you can send Ratch. Okay. And PRH config index tells you the time domain. So PRH config index, this is nothing but a table actually. And I believe this is 36213 probably. If not 213, then it should be 212, but I believe it's 213. So it's this table basically, this one. This one. So this table tells you which subframe you can send the Ratch, which system frame, which subframe, and for this frame and subframe, what preamble formats are applicable, and what preamble ID is applicable. So as I told you, there are 64 preamble IDs. So these information are given by PRACH config index. For example, this configuration says PRACH config index is 3. So for this cell, PRACH config index is 3. Okay. So for this one, preamble format 0 is to be used, and we can use any system frame, but the subframe has to be 1. So any system frame, subframe 1, we can send Ratch, and where exactly in the frequency, that we will find with PRACH frequency offset. 0 is the preamble format that we have to use. So this information is derived using Ratch config index. Once we know this Ratch config, we are in a position to send Ratch. Okay. PDSCH config tells you what the reference signal power is going to be. Since reference signals are used for channel estimation, as we discussed earlier, and it's kind of a, you know, basically when UE reads reference signal for channel estimation, it just kind of checks how much the signal has faded, and what's the how much distortion interference it has gone through, right? So in order to know how much it has faded, it has to know what was the initial power, so that is being given here. Similarly, there are some other configs. There is a PUSCH config and PUCCH config, etc., etc. They are more layer one sounding things, and I believe would be a very you people will have more idea about these, the ones working in L1, than I do. So you can go through this, and then we have this one, uplink power control. See, downlink power control is easy. In downlink power control, what happens is that the controller is network, and network itself has to apply the power. So network has all the inputs to be able to do that. Okay, network has been receiving the hark x or nax based on which it can calculate blur, and also network is receiving channel state information from UE based on SRS signals, etc., etc. Um, Cell specific reference signals basically. So based on them, downlink power control is easy, but it's the uplink power control that requires more. So for uplink power control, first network has to let UE know what should be its initial power, what it has to apply. So for PUCCH, it uses P naught nominal PUSCH and calculates what should be its initial power based on this. Similarly, for PUCCH, it uses P naught nominal, as well as for different formats, there is a different delta, and basically so on. So these parameters are used by UE to calculate initial power. So that makes it a power control related IE. All these. Okay. So based on these, initial power is calculated, and if network is not receiving things properly, okay, if there is a lot of knack and things like that, then UE cannot take the decision for increasing the power or and so on. So for that, we have another uh, way of doing it. Either network can let UE know that you can increase the power using a command called TPC command, okay, or it can simply indicate that in DCI also. I believe there are some fields in DCI also that are related to TPC, so that kind of completes the loop. So this is the initial uh, initial parameters that you can apply, and based on these and the TPC commands being provided at the runtime, you can upgrade or downgrade the power. Is this part clear to everyone?
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So these, and then there are timers and constants. Okay. So if you will study these timers and constants in detail, you will find that they are needed. Of course, that's why they are there. They have not given many here. Okay. Pmax is also not there. There should be a Pmax also somewhere here. But anyways, so UE timers and constants. We have a T300, we have a T301, and we have a T310 and 311. These are timers. N310 and N311 are constants. Okay. Now I don't remember what each one of them does exactly. I remember what T300 does. So T300 is a RRC timer. Okay, so what it does is that when RRC initiates RRC connection request, okay, so message 3 basically in case of initial attach, at that time it starts T300 timer. So it starts T300 timer and provides RRC connection request to MAC, and then MAC initiates Ratch procedure, and then once it has grant through Ratch procedure, it forwards the uh, RRC connection request to network. Network responds with connect contention resolution first, and then with the setup RRC setup, and then UE responds with the RRC connection setup complete, and that's when it stops the T300 timer. So sometimes it can happen that the process can get stuck somewhere. Maybe you is sending Ratch and it's not being responded, or something like that can happen, and T300 timer may expire at RRC. So in that case, RRC does the rollback basically, so that the RRC states do not get stuck. So T300 timer is used there. Similarly, 301, they may have their own usages someplace. I remember one of these, N310 or N311. One of these constant is maintained at RLC, about how many bad packets it receives in a row before it can declare radio link failure. RL. So T300 starts at RRC connection request and stops at RRC connection setup or reject. Okay. T300 is for same thing. What T300 does, 301 is also same, but it is for re-establishment. Okay. Uh, so when RRC decides that it needs to initiate a RRC connection re-establishment, it provides RRC connection re-establishment to MAC and starts T300 and stops it. Um if if it receives either re-establishment or re-establishment reject, one of these two. Okay. Then there are other timers also. T310 was also mentioned in SIB2. Starts when, okay, okay, so N310 is a constant, and if a UE receives these many out of sync indication from lower layers, in that case it starts T310 timers. Okay, or it starts it when handover procedure is triggered. This probably the first one, probably it should be, no, sorry, again, it starts when there are many out of sync indications, and by many means this number, and stops when either UE receives in sync indications after that. And N311 is the number. These many in sync indications, if they are there, then it can stop T300. And if handover procedure is triggered, then also it stops it, because there were lots of out of syncs, and so maybe network triggers handover because the cell is not behaving perfectly. Or if re-establishment procedure is triggered, then also we stop T310, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the story of these timers and constants. What I personally believe is that you understand these timers better when you are actually studying those particular procedures that these timers support. So basically, when you start studying a Ratch procedure in detail, you understand contention resolution timer, and Ratch response window, and power ramp up step, and T300 timer. These things, they help in Ratch procedure. So you understand these better when you are studying Ratch procedure, and so on. Just like we saw, T301 is a timer that supports RRC re-establishment procedure. So when you go on and study re-establishment procedure, then you will realize why T301 is there, why it is so important, etc., etc. Then there is this additional spectrum emission. I really don't know what it does. Uh, then there is this time alignment timer common. Hmm. So TAT is quite a very interesting timer, and it is quite very important also. So what TAT does is, and for TAT I would request you please all to go through one video I have over timing advance. You go through that, you will understand the concept very well. So when UE moves, UE has the mobility. Okay. So when UE moves, UE can lose sync, timing sync mostly with respect to the network. Okay. The boundaries may not be perfectly lying. So okay, your message may not be lying in the timing boundaries of the network, which is paramount. So the timing gets adjusted with time. Okay. Network keeps sending UE something called a MAC control element for time alignment. TA MAC CE it keeps sending. Okay. To say to UE that okay, uh, you need to apply this particular timing advance so that you stay in sync with the timing boundaries of the network. I hope everybody gets that. Okay. So we get timing alignment MAC control element for that. Now can somebody tell me when will you get this?
So this is after this RRC connection.
Okay, that's well. Okay,
I mean,
okay, I understand
timing
what you're trying to
advance
say.
will come in
Yeah, yeah,
where?
yeah. Maybe I'm not asking the right question. So the thing is, uh, the network is here. Okay, here is the cell center, and maybe this is the cell, and UE moves from here to here. In that case, UE need to adjust its timing so that if this is the time boundary, then packet lies within the time boundary. Okay. If it does not, if it is lying somewhere like this, you did not apply proper timing advance and lies this or like this maybe, then the packet will not be received properly at the network and that will be of no use. So it needs to keep adjusting its boundary. Okay. So two things can happen. Either when UE's timing gets disturbed, then network sends this information TMXE, right? Either only in case it gets disturbed or it sends it constantly. Okay, so there is a mixed approach here. The approach is that maybe the timing got disturbed, but it got so disturbed that you cannot even now receive the correction. Are you getting my point? Timing got disturbed, but it got so disturbed that you cannot even receive this. So in that case, UE will keep believing that okay, I am attached to the cell. Data may be coming from UE for UE, but since the timing is not correct, we will be in some kind of a deadlock. Okay, the UE is still attached, but no communication will be happening because the packets are going haywire. Nothing is being sent or received properly. Is everybody getting my point?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so timing has gotten disturbed, but it has gotten so disturbed that we cannot even receive the correction. So what can be done in that case? In that case, we have a timing alignment timer. So this timer says that within this range of time, you should be receiving a max E, even if even if the timing is completely fine. In that case, the value will be set 0, that there is no adjustment, no alignment is required, but you have to receive. Okay. So every time you receives a max CE for timing alignment, it restarts time alignment timer, starts or restarts. Okay. It starts or restarts time alignment timer every time it receives TMXE. And if that timer alignment timer expires, UE will say, okay, my timer has expired. Maybe UL sync has been lost. It declares that UE sync has been lost and it moves on to do the other procedures that it should do in such cases. This is a case of RLF only. Radio link failure due to uplink sync loss. Okay, what needs to be done in that case? That's another procedure that we will see. Currently, we are only SIB2 configurations, like what at a high level, like where they fit. So this is SIB2 from my perspective at this stage. There is a lot in this, lots of information here. If you you know decide to go deep, okay, but as I suggest, you should not. I would really recommend that you don't start going in deep every parameter right away. I would say study at the high level what these do, and deep dive into them when you are studying the relevant procedure. Deep dive into this when you are studying the paging, okay. And basically similarly what I'm trying to say, that these serve for different procedures, and when you are studying procedure, that's the best time to be deep diving into the calculations, how these configurations are used, or the specifications where the relevant tables are, etc, etc. But this in general is the top level picture from my end for this. Okay, so Sai says where we can set contention resolution timer. Sai, can you please tell me what do you mean by we here? Who are we?
Okay, okay. Network.
Network, right? Since network is broadcasting SIP2, it's the network that has to provide a value to UE. Okay, this is your contention resolution timer, which means network is saying that this is how long you need to wait. Okay, after you send message 3, before I send contention resolution CE control element to you, control contention resolution message to you, I will send it within this time. That's essentially what network is telling you, that this is the time I will send. So because network is setting it, because network has the responsibility of allocation. It's the network who has to manage everything. So it's since it's network responsibility, network gets to decide uh, what should be the timer. Like, okay, I'm a big cell, I'll be having too much of traffic, so let's keep contention timer big. If I'm not going to be having too much, keep it small. Okay, that part is clear. Now the thing is, SIB comes under the purview of RRC. Okay, RRC is the one that provides SIB message, SIB payload to Mac. Okay, so RRC must be creating it internally, SIB message. It must be creating it internally and sending it to Mac at the network side to transmit it or broadcast it. So it's the RRC where this value will be filled, ideally. Okay. Now it's where exactly we do it. That is going to be implementation dependent completely, right? Okay, somebody just decided that okay, I will be hard coding one single value, although it would be a very bad decision, very bad implementation. But yeah, theoretically too, someone can just decide okay, I'll be keeping only one kind of contention resolution timer. Somebody can use a configuration based system. Okay, I'll be keeping a configuration file, I'll be reading it from the file, and
Yeah.
based on that, basically it's implementation dependent, but it will be happening in RRC. Did I answer that, your question?
Okay.
No, I'm asking if your
Yeah.
query was answered. I believe it was.
This will depends on our bandwidth also this time.
It can. It
Okay.
can, because if you are a cell with smaller bandwidth, right, and more traffic, in that case you may not be able to allocate everything fast earlier, right? Because you have smaller bandwidth, you have too many people to serve, so it may take you some time to reach every UE's requirements. So yes, it can play a role. It is important, basically, is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Got it.
Anybody else? Any
Okay.
questions based on what we discussed today, or even outside? If I don't know, I will be helpful, but I'll try.
Anybody? Okay. If there are no more questions, I believe we can close today.
Sir, one question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, this TAT, can you please open that last part? This timing alignment common is in SIB2 and also in it will come in RRC setup
RRC,
also.
yeah. That's why it is time alignment timer common,
Huh.
and time alignment timer common and time alignment timer dedicated. That timer is dedicated to each UE. See,
Oh,
anything UE receives in system information is broadcast.
yes.
It's
Yes.
applicable to every UE. Everybody can read this. Okay. But whatever configuration and everything you receive in RRC messaging, that is dedicated. Okay. So if you are receiving time alignment timer dedicated in RRC, okay, in that case you have to have you have to apply that only. Okay. And in that case, when you will be receiving uh, the the value for time alignment in tmaxe, that will be dedicated value, and that DCI will be scrambled using CRNTI. Okay. But a network may also choose to keep like a generic timer rather than a default timer. It can dedicated timer. It can turn off the dedicated timers for each UE, and it can keep a common timer only. That okay, this is the common timer, and I will send a timing alignment timer within this timer. This may help because if you keep uh, different timers for different UEs, you have to check every millisecond what UEs timers are going to expire, which UEs need TMXE to be scheduled right away. But if you keep a common sweeping single TAT, in that case you will know that okay, the TAT is going to be expiring in like 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds. So let's schedule the timing advance information for all UEs in one go, so that everybody will restart their TATs in that particular subframe, and network can just simply stop thinking about TAT until it hits again. It does not have to keep track of TAT for each UE. So both the implementations are offered, basically. They are both available. Get my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you will
And
see, I believe if you will see SIP2 properly in 36331, I am kind of 95% sure, 99% sure that the TAT common can also have some value that basically I'm trying to say that it may be an optional parameter. It may not be rigid. You can turn it off by keeping some kind of enumerated value.
yes, sir.
Yeah, anything else? Anybody? Okay, then let's close today.
Sir,
Uh, yeah,
one question.
yeah.
And sir, can you go back to that
Mm-hmm.
this one message? So this one preamble configuration in
Preamble
PRAC
configuration.
PRAC config.
PRACH.
Huh.
हाँ जी. Ratch or PRACH? Yeah, both are
Yeah.
there.
Sir, here the PRAC config index is 3, right?
Yes.
So is there any relationship between the preamble, this one? Here they have given in the Ratch config preamble info, that is number of RA
Yes.
preambles.
See, preambles overall there are 64 preambles,
Yeah.
and this number of RA preambles means these many preambles are available if you want to do contention based Ratch.
Okay.
Okay, so this number indicates that uh,
Okay.
the other 12, this particular cell from where this SIB2 has been taken, that network kept other 12 for handover purposes, because in handover the preamble is assigned, not randomly chosen. In case of contention based Ratch, it is randomly chosen by UE, but in case of contention free Ratch for handover, they are assigned. So 12 uh, are being kept here for the assignment. Okay, so that's the number of preambles. But PRATCH config index, it does not have anything to do with preamble. Preamble is chosen randomly by UE in case of contention based Ratch, and in case of contention free Ratch, it is assigned. But the preamble config index does indicate which preamble format is to be used.
Sir.
Okay, you get my point.
Yeah. Like my
Not the
question
exact
is,
preamble, but the preamble format.
okay. Let's suppose there are 52 preambles, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Here. So if a preamble is randomly chosen by UE,
Mhm.
so based on this PRATCH config index,
Hmm.
uh, is there any relation between that the chosen preamble and this preamble index?
No,
No, right, sir.
no.
Okay.
See, this is not preamble index. This is config index. PRATCH
Yeah,
config
yeah.
index tells you where in time domain you can send the PRATCH. This is time domain
Okay.
information for PRATCH. This has nothing to do with preambles. Nothing at all to do with preamble. Preamble format, yes, but not with preambles.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now you only tell me when to stop.
My questions are all, sir. I'm okay. But if somebody has any other questions, can ask.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Nobody seems to have any questions. Either I'm a very good teacher and they
Hello, sir.
understood everything, or I'm very bad and they are lost. Yeah, hi.
Hello, sir. Hi, sir. Once the TAT timer is expires,
Hmm.
the uplink synchronization will be a loss, no?
Yeah, UE will declare that UL sync has been lost. It will drop its configuration and it will start re-establishing the RRC connection.
RRC connection or the PRATCH.
Yes, PRATCH will be the only option remaining to initiate RRC connection re-establishment.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. What else I can help with? Okay, let's close now. If there are any questions, everybody knows where to reach me, or maybe when we meet next time.